What if the upside down isn't another dimension at all, but a memory? A dark, twisted echo of a day that never should have happened, playing on a loop for eternity. What if everything we've seen, from the Demogorgon to the Mind Flayer, isn't an alien invasion, but a psychic disease, a cancer, growing out of a single, terrible moment in time? The show gives us an answer, a neat little origin story courtesy of Vecna himself. But look closer at the edges, at the static between the scenes, and you start to see the cracks. The story they told us is clean, but the truth of the upside down is messy, contradictory, and so much more horrifying than a simple monster in a parallel world. It's a place that shouldn't exist, a place that seems to rewrite its own rules, a place that feels less like a physical location and more like a shared nightmare that Hawkins can't wake up from. And the scariest part? It might have been there long before a little girl with a shaved head ever touched a monster in the void. Okay, before we get completely lost in the psychic static of Hawkins, let's do a quick check-in. We gotta know where you're watching this from. Hopefully, it's a town that doesn't have a suspiciously high number of power outages and missing pets. Let us know in the comments. Alright, with that out of the way, let's start untangling the timeline. So let's talk about the official timeline of the Upside Down. This is the version of the story that Season 4 laid out for us, the neat and tidy explanation delivered by none other than the architect of all this chaos, Henry Creel, also known as 001, also known as Vecna. For a long time, the Upside Down was just there, a place of pure, unadulterated mystery. It was the dark reflection, the nether, the veil of shadows. But the narrative the showrunners now want us to believe is that it has a definitive history, a clear point of creation, and a master. This timeline begins not in 1983 with Will Byers, but decades earlier, with a strange, isolated boy named Henry Creel. Henry was born with immense psychic abilities, a deep-seated misanthropy, and a fascination with spiders, seeing them as misunderstood predators who brought order to a messy world. This worldview festered in the Creel house, culminating in him psychically murdering his mother and sister, an act of violence so profound it caught the attention of Dr. Martin Brenner. Brenner took Henry in, rebranding him as Number 1, the template for all his other child experiments at Hawkins' lab. But Henry was too powerful, too cruel, and too defiant. After he massacred the other children in the lab in 1979, a young, terrified 11, in a moment of pure instinct and rage, overpowered him. She didn't kill him, though. Instead, she blasted him with so much psychic force that she tore a hole through reality itself, creating the very first gate and banishing him into an unknown dimension. This is the cornerstone of the official timeline. The Upside Down as a concept was first breached in 1979 by 11. When Henry Creel tumbled through this raw, primordial dimension, it was nothing like the Hawkins we know. The official timeline states it was a chaotic landscape of floating rocks, red lightning, and strange, unformed life. It was hell, but it was a hell he could shape. For years he drifted, exploring this Dimension X, this untamed wilderness. And then he found something. A swirling mass of dark particles, a hive-mind intelligence with no form of its own. This was the creature that would become the Mind Flayer. According to Vecna's monologue, he saw potential in this raw, powerful entity. He approached it, connected with it, and using his own immense psychic power, he gave it purpose. He shaped it into the spider-like form that mirrored his childhood obsession, effectively becoming the 5-star general of this shadow army. He became the brain, and the Mind Flayer became his weapon. He was no longer just Henry, or 001, he was the master of this dark dimension, molding it to his will. This is a crucial beat in the timeline. The Mind Flayer was not the original big bad. It was a tool, a puppet, for a bitter, exiled human. The entire hierarchy of the Upside Down we thought we knew was a lie. The demogorgons, the demodogs, the demobats, the vines, they were all extensions of this hive mind, which was in turn an extension of Vecna. He was the king, and this was his kingdom, but his kingdom didn't look like home, not yet. The final critical piece of this official timeline happens on November 6th, 1983. This is the day we see in Season 1, the day Will Byers vanishes. On that day, 11, during another experiment under Brenner's watch, makes contact with a demogorgon in the void. This contact rips open a stable mother gate in the basement of Hawkins' lab, finally creating a permanent bridge between the worlds. And at that exact moment, as the gate solidified and Will Byers was pulled into the Upside Down, something fundamental changed. The dimension, which had been a formless hellscape, suddenly took on the form of Hawkins. It became a perfect, decaying replica of the town, right down to Castle Byers in the woods. Vecna explains this himself. He says that when 11 created the first gate that sent him there, she opened a door. But when she opened the second gate in 1983, she created a window. And through that window, the Upside Down imprinted on Hawkins, freezing itself in time on that exact day. Every book on the shelf, every car in a driveway, every poster on a wall in the Upside Down is a snapshot of November the 6th, 1983. It's a dark, twisted photograph of the day the invasion truly began. So, to summarize the official timeline, Henry Creel becomes a psychic weapon, gets banished by 11 in 1979 into a raw dimension, finds and shapes the Mind Flayer, and then waits. In 1983, 11 opens another gate, which causes the dimension to psychically imprint on Hawkins, creating the Upside Down as we know it, frozen on the day of Will's disappearance. From that point on, every incursion, the Demogorgon in Season 1, the Mind Flayer possessing Will in Season 2, the fleshy spider monster in Season 3, and Vecna's direct attacks in Season 4, are all part of a single, coordinated plan orchestrated by Vecna to merge the worlds and reshape ours in his own dark image. It's a story of a single, powerful villain with a clear motive and a linear plan of attack. It's clean, it's understandable, and it positions Vecna as the ultimate author of all of Hawkins' pain. But the weirdness doesn't stop there, because what if that timeline, the one told to us by the villain himself, is just another manipulation? What if that's just the surface? Let's dig into the evidence for this official timeline, the clues laid out by the Duffer brothers that seem to confirm Vecna's story. The most significant piece of evidence is, of course, Vecna's own exposition-heavy monologue to 11 in Season 4, Episode 7, The Massacre at Hawkins' Lab. This is the show explicitly telling us the timeline. We see it in flashbacks, a young 11 facing off against Henry Creel, the raw power, the scream, the fleshy, organic gate tearing open in the wall of the Rainbow Room. We see him hurtling through the red, stormy chaos of what the script calls Dimension X. We see him physically transform, scorched by the Dimension's lightning, turning into the monstrous form of Vecna. This isn't subtext, it's text. The show spends a huge portion of its most pivotal episode laying this groundwork. It's a direct, unambiguous statement of cause and effect. 11 banished Henry, and in doing so created the first connection to the Upside Down, and inadvertently created her own arch-nemesis. This scene is the bedrock of the entire official timeline, a memory that 11 herself unearths, giving it the weight of a recovered truth rather than just a villain's tale. Another major piece of evidence is the state of the Upside Down itself, specifically the fact that it's frozen in time. When Nancy Wheeler gets pulled into the Upside Down in Season 4, she escapes to her bedroom, only to find it's not her current bedroom. It's her room from 1983. Her math test is on the desk, her old wallpaper is on the walls, and crucially, the diary where she writes down her thoughts is filled with entries up to November 6th, 1983, and then it's blank. Her guns, which she bought after the events of Season 1, are missing. This is the aha moment for the characters and the audience. It's a concrete, physical clue that proves the Upside Down didn't just mirror Hawkins, it copied it on a specific date and then stopped evolving. This directly supports Vecna's claim that the dimension took on Hawkins' form on the day the Mother Gate opened and Will was taken. It retroactively explains so many oddities. Why did the buyer's house in the Upside Down have the Christmas lights Joyce hung up? Because Will was there and his presence was allowing for a real-time, fluid connection. But the rest of the world was a static snapshot. This frozen-in-time detail is perhaps the most compelling piece of evidence outside of Vecna's speech, because it's something the characters discover for themselves. It's a scientific observation within the logic of the show's world, a hard data point that validates the official narrative. We also have the evidence of the hive mind's behavior across all seasons, which in retrospect points to a single intelligence. In Season 2, the Mind Flayer possesses Will Byers and uses him as a spy. It learns about the lab, about the gate, about its enemies. It speaks through Will, saying it wants to kill everyone. It's an intelligent, strategic entity. In Season 3, it uses the Flayed to build a massive, physical body for itself, a creature made of melted flesh and bone. This seems like a different modus operandi, but it fits with Vecna's goal of bringing the Upside Down to Earth. The Mind Flayer was trying to build a body in our world because its true form was trapped in another dimension. With Vecna as the brain, this makes perfect sense. He couldn't cross over himself yet, so he sent his proxy, the Mind Flayer, to do the work. The psychic connection Vecna establishes with his victims in Season 4, the trance, the levitation, the bone snapping, is also visually and thematically linked to the Mind Flayer's possession of Billy. Billy levitated in the steel works held aloft by the Mind Flayer's power. The Mind Flayer spoke through him, using him as a mouthpiece, just as Vecna taunts his victims inside their minds. The visual language is consistent. The Duffer Brothers have even confirmed this in interviews, stating that they always envisioned a single villain behind the curtain, a dark wizard controlling the monsters. They retroactively applied the Vecna label, but the idea of a singular, intelligent consciousness has been seeded from the beginning. Every monster, every attack, every vine is just a different finger on the same hand, Vecna's hand. This makes the entire saga a cohesive single story rather than a series of unrelated Monster of the Week attacks. It all fits together so neatly, a puzzle whose final piece was just handed to us. And the rabbit hole only gets deeper when you start to think about what this official timeline really implies for the world of Stranger Things. So, let's speculate on what this official timeline means for the grander lore of Stranger Things. If we accept Vecna's story as 100% true, it has staggering implications for the nature of the Upside Down, the origins of psychic powers, and Vecna's true ultimate endgame. First, it redefines the Upside Down. It's not an ancient, evil dimension that has existed for eons. It's a relatively new creation, a Frankenstein's monster of a place. It's one part Dimension X, the raw, chaotic, primordial plane, and one part a psychic photograph of Hawkins, Indiana. This means the Upside Down is fundamentally unnatural and unstable hybrid. The red lightning and floating rocks are its native features, but the buildings, the streets, and the very air are an overlay, an artificial construct. This could explain why it's so decayed and toxic. It's like a corrupted file on a computer, a copy of a copy that's slowly breaking down. The snow that's always falling isn't snow, it's particulate matter, the dimension's version of dust and decay. It's the byproduct of a world held together by one man's will and a single, stolen moment in time. This also implies that the Upside Down is not infinite. It might only be as large as Hawkins itself. Is there anything beyond the borders of Hawkins in the Upside Down? Or is it just a pocket, a bubble of reality floating in the chaos of Dimension X? If Vecna dies, does the Hawkins overlay simply dissolve, leaving only the primordial hellscape behind? Or does the entire pocket dimension collapse? The official timeline suggests the Upside Down is finite, artificial, and dependent on its creator. This timeline also forces us to reconsider the origins of psychic powers. The show introduces Henry Creel as a boy who was just born different. His abilities seem to be innate, not the result of an experiment. He is the source. Dr. Brenner didn't create psychics, he found one and tried to replicate him. 11, 8, and all the other numbered children are, in essence, copies of Henry Creel. Their powers are derived from him. This positions Henry as a kind of psychic, patient zero. But where did his powers come from? Was it a random genetic mutation, or was he somehow touched by something from another dimension even before he was banished? The official timeline doesn't answer this, but it frames the entire conflict as a battle between a natural psychic, Henry, and an engineered one, 11. 11 is, in a way, the weapon Brenner created to control his original failed experiment. The ultimate irony is that Brenner's attempts to replicate Henry's power were the only thing that could stop him. This also raises a chilling question. If Henry's powers are natural, could there be others like him out there in the world? Is the potential for this kind of power and this kind of evil a natural part of the human condition in the Stranger Things universe? The story of Hawkins might not be an isolated incident. It could be the flashpoint for a new, terrifying kind of human evolution. And what about Vecna's endgame? The official timeline tells us his goal is to merge the dimensions, to bring the Upside Down to Earth and remake our world in his image. He says he wants to transcend his human form and impose his version of order on a broken world. But why? Is it just revenge against the girl who banished him and the world that rejected him? Or is it something more cosmic? By shaping the Mind Flayer and the raw stuff of Dimension X, Henry essentially made himself a god. He's a creator. His plan isn't just about killing people, it's about terraforming. He wants to turn Earth into a new extension of his kingdom. The 4 gates he opens with his kills aren't just doorways, they are anchors designed to pull the Upside Down through and overwrite our reality. He's not just an invader, he's a competing creator god with a different vision for reality. This is a much grander and more terrifying plan than simply unleashing monsters. He sees humanity as a plague that needs to be wiped out so he can build a new, perfect world on its ashes. And the scariest part of this official timeline is that he's been meticulously planning this for decades. Every event, from the Demogorgon's first appearance to the Battle of Starcourt, was a calculated move in his long game. He was testing the defenses, learning about his enemy, 11, and gathering power. Season 4 wasn't the beginning of his plan, it was the final phase. That brings us to another strange piece of this story. The other powered individuals. Now that brings us to another strange piece of this story. Another powerful child who has a connection to this place that defies easy explanation. Will Byers. What if the official timeline, the story told by Vecna, is a lie of omission? What if Henry Creel didn't create the Upside Down but merely found it, and what he found was something another psychic child had already been shaping? Let's introduce a shocking alternative concept, a counter-timeline that has been a favorite among fans for years. The idea that Will Byers created the Upside Down. In this version of events, the Dimension 11 banished Henry II in 1979 was just that, a raw, formless void. It had no shape, no substance, no Hawkins. It was just a place of exile. Then, years later, on November the 6th, 1983, a lonely, creative, and latently psychic boy gets pulled into that same dimension. And in his terror, in his loneliness, and with his powerful, untapped imagination, he unconsciously gives it form. He paints a picture of the only place he knows, his hometown. The Upside Down isn't a copy of Hawkins frozen in time by a gate, it's a psychic projection of Hawkins, manifested by Will Byers. Think about it. Why does the Upside Down look like Hawkins? The official timeline says it's because the gate opened, but that's a bit too convenient. In this counter timeline, the reason is much more personal and tragic. The Upside Down is a reflection of Will's mind. It's a world of shadows and decay because that's how he experienced it, a place of fear, loneliness, and death. The details are all there. Castle Byers, his personal secret sanctuary, is one of the few places that seems to have any significance in the Upside Down. It's his safe space, a beacon in the darkness he literally created. The Demogorgon itself could be a manifestation of his fears. The party had just fought a creature in their D&D campaign called the Demogorgon. What if the raw, predatory life form that already existed in Dimension X was given that shape by Will's terrified imagination? He named his monster, he gave form to the formless. The Upside Down looking like his D&D campaign isn't a coincidence, it's the source code. This theory posits that Will isn't just a victim who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He is a psychic of incredible, perhaps even reality-bending power, and the entire landscape of the show's conflict is a nightmare of his own making. This completely reframes Vecna's role. In this timeline, when Vecna arrived in 1979, he was just a prisoner in an empty void. He was trapped, powerless to shape it. He drifted for years until 1983, when suddenly a world appeared around him, a world created by a little boy. And in that world, he found a powerful hive mind intelligence, the Mind Flayer, and a ready-made army of monsters shaped by a child's imagination. He didn't create the army, he hijacked it. He saw this terrified, powerful boy as the ultimate battery, the perfect anchor to link this psychic world to the physical one. Will's connection to the Mind Flayer in Season 2 wasn't just a standard possession, it was the original creator of a world being usurped by a more powerful, more malicious consciousness. Vecna saw what Will had made and said, "I'll take that." He became a colonizer of Will's psychic territory. This explains why Will has such a unique and persistent connection to the Mind Flayer and the Upside Down. He's not just true sight, he's feeling a violation of his own subconscious space. The tingling on his neck isn't just a warning, it's a part of him screaming that the thing he made is being used for evil. It's his creation, and Vecna is the squatter who turned it into a weapon. This counter-timeline also explains the deep, almost thematic connection between Will and Henry Creel. Both are described as sensitive boys who were different from others. Both used art and imagination as an escape. Henry with his spiders, Will with his drawings and D&D campaigns. What if they are two sides of the same coin? Two boys with similar latent psychic potential, one who was twisted by cruelty and misanthropy, and one who was defined by friendship and love. Vecna represents the curdled, weaponized version of the same power that lies dormant in Will. This would make Will Byers the secret, narrative opposite to Vecna, not 11. 11 is the soldier, the cannon, who can fight him on a physical plane. But Will is his true antithesis, the creator versus the destroyer. The entire saga becomes the story of a war over a child's soul, and the world he accidentally created. Vecna's plan to merge the dimensions isn't just about conquering Earth, it's about solidifying his control over the dimension Will created, making the nightmare permanent. If this is true, it changes everything we thought we knew about the show's quietest and most tormented hero. It means the key to defeating Vecna might not be a psychic blast from 11, but something to do with Will finally understanding and taking control of the world he brought into being. This turns the entire final season upside down. Let's pull on the threads of evidence for this contrasting concept, the Will created it timeline. The clues are more subtle than Vecna's big speech, but they are woven into the very fabric of the show, pulling at the corners of the official story. The most significant piece of evidence is the Dungeons and Dragons connection. It's not just a cute 80s reference, it seems to be a literal blueprint for the events that unfold. In the very first episode, the boys are fighting a Demogorgon in their basement. Hours later, a real Demogorgon appears and takes Will. In Season 2, they name the new threat the Mind Flayer, another D&D monster known for psychic control and creating thralls. Lo and behold, that's exactly what the creature does to Will and the Demodogs. In Season 4, Dustin explicitly names their new enemy Vecna, a powerful, lich-like wizard from D&D lore who was once human and ascends to godhood. The parallels are one-to-one. The official timeline presents this as the kids cleverly pattern-matching the monsters they encounter. But the Will Created It timeline suggests a more terrifying cause and effect. The D&D campaign is the source code. Will, as a powerful, latent psychic, is unconsciously manifesting these concepts into reality within the malleable fabric of Dimension X. The monsters aren't just like the D&D monsters, they are the D&D monsters because that's what Will's imagination supplied. Consider the eerie specificity of the Upside Down's design. Why is it a dark, decaying mirror of Hawkins? This timeline provides a much more emotionally resonant answer than a gate opened. It's a reflection of Will's psychological state. He's a sensitive kid, as Joyce constantly reminds us. He's bullied, he feels like an outcast, and he's terrified of the world changing around him as his friends start to grow up and get girlfriends. The Upside Down is a physical manifestation of that adolescent angst and trauma. A world that is familiar but wrong. A place where he is totally alone, hunted by a monster. The constant snow or spores in the air could be seen as a metaphor for the oppressive sadness and fear that he feels. It's a world literally choked by its own sorrow. The flickering lights that Joyce uses to communicate with him aren't just a clever sci-fi trick. In this timeline, it's Will's subconscious, his own psychic energy, reaching out and manipulating the electromagnetic field of his own house, desperately trying to make contact from the world he's trapped inside and created. He is the ghost in the machine because he's the one who built the machine. Then there's the unique nature of Will's connection. No other character has a bond with the Upside Down like he does. 11 can open gates and fight its creatures, but Will is an antenna. He feels its presence. He can sense the Mind Flayer's thoughts. He was possessed by it and survived, retaining a link. The official timeline explains this as a lingering side effect of his time there, like a psychic virus he never fully shook. But the Will Created It theory offers a deeper explanation. He has true sight because he's sensing a disturbance in his own creation. The Mind Flayer is a foreign entity, a cancer that invaded his world, and he can feel it moving around inside his own subconscious territory. In Season 4, his neck-tingling returns with a vengeance, specifically when Vecna is active. Why? Because Vecna has become the new master of the hive mind, and by extension, the new master of Will's world. Will isn't just sensing a generic monster, he's sensing the usurper on his throne. This is also supported by his artistic talent. His drawings are often prophetic. He draws the Mind Flayer before they even have a name for it. Is he just remembering, or is he creating? Is he the artist? And the Upside Down is his dark, unfinished canvas? The show has consistently emphasized Will's creative spirit. It would be a masterful piece of long-form storytelling if his greatest strength, his imagination, was also the source of Hawkins' greatest horror. It only gets more twisted from here. And now think about what that means for Will buyers. Think about the emotional and psychological cost of these timelines. Whether you subscribe to the official narrative or the counter theory, Will Byers is positioned at the absolute epicenter of the trauma. Let's look at it through the lens of the official timeline first. In this version, he is a victim of cosmic bad luck. He was simply the boy who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time on the night the Mother Gate ripped open. He was dragged into a pre-existing hellscape ruled by a sadistic, godlike being and used as a vessel, a puppet. His body was hijacked by the Mind Flayer, his mind used as a spyglass for an interdimensional general. He was forced to feel everything the Mind Flayer's flayed army felt to experience their deaths as they were burned by the gate's closure. This is a profound violation. His personal agency was stolen from him, his mind and body turned into a battlefield. The PTSD he exhibits in the following seasons, the flashbacks, the anxiety, the true sight that feels more like a curse than a gift, is the scar tissue of this violation. He's the boy who went to hell and came back, but a part of hell came back with him. This makes his journey one of pure survival against an external evil. His struggle is to reclaim his own mind, to sever the connection to the monster that used him, and to find a way to be a normal kid again in a world that can never be normal for him. His quietness, his isolation, isn't just about him being sensitive. It's the armor of a child soldier who has seen too much. Now let's look at the emotional cost through the terrifying lens of the Will Created It timeline. This is in many ways an even more tragic and psychologically devastating story. If Will created the Upside Down, then he is not just a victim. He is the unwitting author of his own and his friends' suffering. Every monster, every death, every moment of terror that has plagued Hawkins since 1983 is, on some level, his fault. It's a weight of guilt that is almost impossible to comprehend. His creative, sensitive nature, the very core of who he is, becomes the source of a world-destroying horror. The Demogorgon that hunted him, the mind flayer that possessed him, these were his own nightmares turned real. His trauma is no longer just about what was done to him, but what came from him. This would explain his deep, internalized sense of being wrong or a mistake, something he tearfully confesses to Mike in season 4. He's not just talking about his sexuality, he's talking about a fundamental feeling of being a source of pain and otherness. He feels like a monster because in a way he created the monsters. His journey is no longer just about survival, it's about atonement and control. He would need to confront the fact that his own mind is a weapon of mass destruction and learn to master it before it, or Vecna using it, destroys everything he loved. This reframes his entire character arc into a dark, Stephen King-esque story about a boy with godlike powers who must learn to control his own inner demons before they become literal, world-ending ones. The quiet kid in the corner isn't quiet because he's shy. He's quiet because he's terrified of what he's capable of. This psychological lens isn't limited to Will. Think about 11. Her entire identity is built on being the weapon, the superhero. Her trauma stems from her time in the lab and the guilt she feels for opening the gate and unleashing this evil. In the official timeline, her guilt is justified. She banished Henry and created Vecna. The battle against the Upside Down is her personal responsibility, a mess she has to clean up. Her journey is about finding her own identity outside of being a weapon and forgiving herself for her role in this catastrophe. But in the Will Created It timeline, her role shifts. She's still a hero, but the initial sin isn't hers alone. She opened the door, yes, but Will created the world behind it. This might lessen her burden of guilt, but it also complicates her role. She is fighting a war on behalf of her friend, a war against a world born from his subconscious. Her power is the only thing that can protect Will from himself. And then there's Max. Her trauma is rooted in grief and guilt over Billy's death. Vecna preys on this, using her darkest memories as a weapon. This shows us how the Upside Down, regardless of its origin, functions as a psychic predator. It finds the cracks in your soul and rips them open. For Max, the fight against Vecna is a fight against her own depression and self-loathing. It's a battle for her own mind, a theme that resonates whether the ultimate evil is a banished psychic or a manifestation of shared trauma. So is Hawkins just a pawn in something cosmic, a playground for psychic gods, or is the entire conflict a metaphor for the internal battles these children are forced to fight every single day? Could this entire timeline be a lie? But what if both of these timelines are wrong, or at least incomplete? What if we're asking the right questions but looking at the wrong variable? Let's introduce a final wildcard topic, a concept that has been lurking in the shadows of fan theories for years and gained strange new life after Season 4, the idea of a time loop, specifically one centered around a fan-favorite character we thought we'd lost. Let's talk about Eddie Munson and the Kaz, the bloody-handed theory. In D&D lore, Kaz is the most trusted lieutenant of Vecna. He's a powerful vampire warrior who wields a shield and a sword. Ultimately, however, Kaz betrays Vecna, and though he fails to kill him, he is a critical part of the Archlich's original defeat. Now look at Eddie in Season 4. He's the leader of the Hellfire Club, a D&D aficionado. He goes into the Upside Down and dies a hero's death, fighting off a swarm of demo bats to buy his friends more time. He uses a makeshift shield and a weapon. He is, quite literally, bitten to death by creatures from the Upside Down, creatures controlled by Vecna. The theory goes like this: Eddie Munson doesn't stay dead. Vecna, seeing the defiant spirit in the boy who ran his D&D club, resurrects him. He brings Eddie back as his second in command, his general, his Kaz. The vampiric connection is right there. Eddie was killed by bats. This Eddie is Kaz theory introduces a fascinating new timeline, one that isn't about the past, but about the future. It suggests that the final battle won't just be about 11 versus Vecna. It will be about the party having to face a twisted, monstrous version of their friend. Dustin would have to confront the hero he idolized, now turned into a powerful slave of the monster they're trying to destroy. This would be an emotional gut punch on a level the show has never attempted before. But it gets even wilder. What if this isn't the first time it's happened? This is where the time loop concept comes in. Some fans have speculated that the story of Stranger Things is a recurring cycle. Vecna rises, he's defeated or pushed back, but he always returns and the cycle begins anew with slight variations each time. What if Eddie's transformation into Kaz is a fixed point in every loop? What if the Kaz that betrays Vecna in the original D&D lore that the kids know is actually a story from a future loop that has somehow bled back into the past, becoming a myth? They are living out a story that has already been written, or a story that is endlessly writing itself. This time loop theory could explain some of the show's strange coincidences and sense of destiny. Why was Will taken? In a time loop, it's because he's always the one who is taken. Why did 11 appear at the exact moment she was needed? Because she always does. The events aren't random, they are beats in a repeating song. The Mind Flayer's fixation on 11 wouldn't just be about her being a threat, it would be about a recurring memory of her as the one who always thwarts its plans. Vecna himself could be a victim of this loop. His rage, his desire to end the world, could be fueled by the frustration of living through the same failed attempt over and over again. He wants to break the loop, but not by saving the world, by ending it for good. This would reframe his goal from simple conquest to a desperate cosmic attempt to escape a cyclical prison. He isn't just trying to win, he's trying to force a game over because he's tired of playing. And where does that leave our heroes? Are they just puppets of fate, destined to repeat their actions forever? Or does their love for each other, their friendship, introduce a new variable each time, a small change that could eventually break the cycle for good? This wildcard theory turns the entire narrative from a linear story of past, present, and future into a tangled, repeating knot. The timeline isn't a straight line, it's a circle, but maybe they're all connected in some way. So where does this leave us? We have three competing versions of the timeline. First, the official timeline where Vecna is the prime mover, a human-turned-god who created the Upside Down as we know it in 1983 and has been orchestrating every attack since. Second, we have the counter-timeline where Will Byers is the unwitting creator, a psychic artist who painted a world from his own fears, a world that was later hijacked by the malevolent Vecna. And third, we have the wildcard timeline, a reality-bending time loop where events are fated to repeat, and characters like Eddie Munson might be destined to become monstrous players in a game that never truly ends. How do we synthesize these? How can they all be true? Maybe the truth isn't in choosing one, but in seeing how they overlap. Perhaps the timeline is a layered, corrupted document, with each theory representing a different layer of truth. Let's start with the base layer, the Will created it timeline. Let's assume Will, with his latent psychic abilities, did indeed give form to Dimension X when he was pulled in. He created the Dark Hawkins, the Demogorgon, the initial landscape of the nightmare. This is the foundation. Now let's add the second layer, the official timeline. Vecna, who had been banished to this same dimension years prior and was floating in a formless void, suddenly finds himself in a world made by a child, but a world nonetheless. He sees the raw materials, a hive mind, a ready-made monster, a psychic anchor to the real world, Will, and he seizes his opportunity. Vecna's story to 11 is true, from his perspective. He did find the Mind Flayer and give it purpose. He did shape the dimension to his will, but he's leaving out the most important detail. He was working with clay that someone else had already molded. He's not the creator god. He's the ultimate plagiarist. He took Will's personal internal nightmare and weaponized it, turning it into his own personal army. This synthesis honors both Will's unique connection to the Upside Down and Vecna's role as the story's mastermind. Will is the source, but Vecna is the architect of the war. This makes their inevitable confrontation even more powerful. It's a battle between the original creator of a world and the tyrant who conquered it. Will's power isn't just a weapon, it's the key to the kingdom. He has home field advantage in a way even 11 doesn't. So where does the final wildcard layer fit in? The time loop. What if the conflict between Will the Creator and Vecna the Conqueror is so cosmically significant that it has trapped time in a loop? Their struggle is the engine of the repetition. Each loop is an attempt by Vecna to finally solidify his control over Will's creation and merge it with the real world. And each loop is an attempt by the party, fueled by 11's power and their collective love, to stop him. This would explain the uncanny sense of premonition and the D&D parallels. The D&D lore isn't the source code for the first loop. It's the garbled memory of previous loops bleeding through into the kids' collective consciousness. They are remembering future events as a fantasy game. Eddie's potential transformation into Cass isn't just a possible future. It's something that has happened before, a tragic beat in the cycle that is destined to repeat until the core conflict is resolved. This synthesis connects all the dots. The timeline is not a line or a circle, but a spiral. It's a repeating story built on a foundation of a child's fear, hijacked by a monster's ambition. The characters are living it for the first time, but the universe is not. They are fighting to break a cycle they don't even know they're in. The key to finally winning isn't just killing the monster or closing the gate, it's fundamentally changing the story. It requires Will to reclaim his creation, 11, to use her power not just to destroy, but perhaps to heal or rewrite, and the entire party to introduce a variable that has never happened before, a new move in a game that has been played for eternity. In the end, one thing's clear. The history of the Upside Down is not a straight line. So where does that leave us, standing at the edge of Hawkins, with the red lightning crackling on the horizon? We're left with a mystery that is far more profound than just a monster from another dimension. The story of the Upside Down's timeline isn't just a sci-fi backstory, it's a haunting exploration of how trauma itself can reshape reality. Whether the Upside Down was created by Vecna's rage or Will's fear, it functions in the same way. It is a place made of pain. It is a physical manifestation of grief, loneliness, and violation. It's a world where the worst moment of your life isn't just a memory, it's the weather. The spores that fall like snow, are the dust of a single terrible day. November the 6th, 1983, a day that refuses to end. The vines that creep and choke are the tendrils of a sorrow that is actively trying to pull you under. This is the deeper, more resonant horror of Stranger Things. It's not about the jump scares or the grotesque monsters. It's about the idea that a wound can become a world. Vecna, a boy twisted by his own cruelty and rejection, creates a kingdom that reflects his internal state, ordered, predatory, and devoid of love. Will Byers, if the counter-timeline holds any truth, may have accidentally created a kingdom from his own loneliness and terror. In both cases, the Upside Down is a soul-made manifest. It's a psychic cancer that has become geographic. And the fight to stop it is not just a physical battle with explosions and psychic powers, it's a psychological war to prevent that sickness from spreading. In the end, the true nature of the timeline may be less important than what it represents. It represents the past, an unresolved, festering past that refuses to stay buried. It's Vecna's past and Will's and Eleven's and Max's. It's a past that literally reaches out to drag you back into the dark. The final victory for the heroes of Hawkins won't be about just killing a monster. It will be about finding a way to move forward. It will be about proving that the future does not have to be a dark, decaying reflection of the worst day of your life. It's about proving that even when the world is frozen in a moment of absolute horror, you can still find a way to write the next page in the diary. The timeline of the Upside Down is the story of a nightmare trying to become permanent. The story of our heroes is the fight to finally wake up.